Alright guys, I know the free-to-play swimsuit characters who have come out on global have not been super crazy. Like the swimsuit Asta wasn't super crazy, the swimsuit Yuno wasn't super crazy, but they both had their uses. However, out of the 3 free-to-play characters to come out on global, I would like to say this Vanessa is probably the best out of the 3 right now currently, because she actually fits fairly well with a green mono team, especially with the new Charlotte who just came out. And so it might actually be worth building her, especially if you are playing on a free-to-play account or if you are playing on like a Dolphin account. So today we're going to talk about the potential builds that you can do for her, including what skills you want to upgrade first, what skill cards you want to run on her, what gear you want to do for her, whether or not you should enhance her, what talent you want to run on her talent tree, and then as well what teams you want to run for PvP and PvE. So let's start by talking about Vanessa's passive. Her unique passive for getting her to LR status is that at the start of a wave, it grants protection to the ally with the lowest speed for 2 turns, meaning they cannot be targeted. Now, keep in mind, Vanessa does have fairly low speed herself, so she could be applying this protection to herself, which could be good because she is an attacker type unit, and you are probably going to be building her for attack as opposed to defense, or rather magic attack as opposed to defense. And because you're building her as an attacker type character, she is probably going to be fairly squishy, so having that protection on her is very nice so she can't be targeted. Now keep in mind, if you put a lower speed character on your team next to her, she will give that protection to the lower speed character. I also want to talk about her enhanced passive before we get into her skills, because her enhanced passive is very important when it comes to talking about her skills and how we're going to build her. So her enhanced passive for getting her to 2 dupes, as I have right here, is that if damage resist is equal to 205, you get 3% increased damage. If it's equal to 270, you get 5% increased damage. And if it's equal to 310, you get 10% increased damage. That's pretty good, but it gets way better when you do fully dupe her out. Okay, so if you're able to fully dupe her out, which this would be more for whales, because even though we got her free to play on global, you do have to summon to be able to fully max dupe her out, at least to my knowledge. Okay, so this part would be more for whales, but even as a free to play, you should hopefully be able to get this, because this requires you to basically get 1 copy of her while pulling for Charlotte or something else. So hopefully you can do that and get 2 copies in total. The other copies you'll get from just the event. Okay, but at 5 copies, you go from 230. If you have 230 damage resist, you get 8% extra damage, which is a lot better than 3. At 310 damage resist, you get 15% extra damage, which is a lot better than 5. And at 350 damage resist, you get 35% extra damage, which is a lot better than 10, right? Now, you do have to have higher damage resist here, but it's really not that hard to accomplish if you know how to reroll your substats, which we'll talk about when we get to the gear. But 35% extra damage is actually crazy. Okay, so because her special skill is an AoE attack, that is going to allow her to hit very hard. But let's start with talking about her skill 1. Her skill 1 is called Crimson Thread. It is a single target attack that is guaranteed to inflict a bleed unless they have status element immunity. And the thing about her bleed though is it's not the craziest, because the enemy is going to take 5% of your max HP at the start of a turn. Her max HP is 39,000. I believe that's her own max HP. I'm still not 100% on the bleed. It might be from their own max HP, but I believe it's based on yours. I could be wrong. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But that is a single target attack right there. And skill 2 is also a single target attack. Love Smash grants a blessing of protection buff for 2 turns. So this is a little bit different from the normal protection from her passive. So what blessing of protection does is it grants a 8% of max HP as HP recovery whenever damage resist is triggered against an enemy's attack. And since you're building her for damage resist, you're going to be getting this quite a bit. So that blessing of protection is going to be healing her, which is nice to help keep her alive and helps her be a little less squishy overall. And then her special skill. This is the thing that makes her really good. It is an AoE attack right here with a 50% chance to silence per enemy it hits, okay, for 2 turns. That is a 2-turn silence, meaning they're unable to use skill 2, which is really pretty good. And as you level up this skill, it'll increase the amount of damage you do with the AoE, making it hit really hard. Plus, if you do have her max duped out and you have this skill fully upgraded and you have the damage resist that you need to get the extra passives here, she's going to hit fairly hard with this AoE in addition to silencing most, if not all, of the enemy team. So that's a really good ability. So in terms of upgrade priority, I would say upgrade the special skill first. Then I would probably go for skill 2 with the Blessing of Protection. And then I would go for skill 1 with the Bleed. As for the combo skill, I wouldn't really worry about it too much, but you could upgrade it if you wanted to. So if an enemy is afflicted with a debuff like silence or something else from your team, attacks after granting a 30% increased damage dealt buff. Now this isn't going to be as prevalent or as useful because we have characters like Black Asta who can do status ailment immunities if the Black Asta is max duped out right from the start of battle, so they might not have a debuff on them and you're not going to be able to use this combo skill as much in PvP. That's why I say I wouldn't worry too much about upgrading it, but if you do upgrade it, it increases the amount of damage dealt on your combo skill, which is kind of nice. Okay, so once again, priority, I would go special skill, skill 2, skill 1, and then combo skill for upgrade priority. Let's talk about skill cards. So as you can see, I actually do not have her skill card yet. It is free to play to get. I just haven't gotten it from the event yet because I have been grinding out other things like gear and stuff like that with the reduced stamina cost we had recently in game. But another good option besides her skill card, I would say, is Breath of Darkness right here. So Breath of Darkness is just going to increase her overall attack and increase how much damage you can do. Besides this, we'll talk about her skill card and one other potential option. So this is Vanessa's skill card. It's called Beach Prank, and if you look at what it does, it grants 15 to 30% increased magic attack, which is pretty good. That's a pretty good amount of increased magic attack, and that can actually help her out a lot. And it only occurs though when damage resist is triggered. Now you are building her for damage resist, so it's very possible that you trigger it, and I actually don't mind that at all. I think that's pretty good for her kit and for her build to run her particular skill card on it. Whether this is better or the other cards that I show you, hard to say, but I do think personally this card is very good because it also on skill 2 gives debuff immunity for 2 turns, which is really nice to be able to apply to her, so you don't have to worry about her getting debuffed or stunned or stuff like that, and she's able to, you know, do her job and attack and potentially AoE the whole team and silence the whole team and do all the good stuff that she does. Another option you could run besides Vanessa would be the Blazing Hate skill card of Fauna, and this applies a 10 to 20% increase all attack to yourself. Once again, that's pretty similar to Breath of Darkness, and it's just going to increase your overall attack and magic attack, allowing Vanessa to hit harder. Alright, so now let's talk about one of the potentially most complicated parts of building Vanessa, and that is the gear, because there's actually a lot that goes into the gear building for this character as compared to other characters because you need very specific things. So let's start with the sets. The sets I have right here is a gold attack set, a gold mobility set, and a gold crit rate set. Now, keep in mind, she is going to be a character whose main damage is going to be her AoE special skill. So if you can get her AoE to hit a crit with the increased damage from her enhanced passive, right? You have increased damage from her enhanced passive on top of landing a crit that's going to make her hit really hard. So that's why I'm running the crit rate gear right here to give her increased crit rate overall. If you can get increased crit rate substats, that's also really nice to help you out a little bit. As for the mobility set here, I'm running that because she has really low speed, right? So if I want the option of putting the protection on another character with lower speed, that means I'm probably going to have to raise her speed, so that's why I'm running a half mobility set. And the reason I'm running the attack set, once again, is just this one's pretty simple, to increase her overall magic attack percentage to give her more damage overall. Now, in terms of stats that you're building for, you are building for 2 main stats. You're going to be building for magic attack here, and you are also going to be building for damage resist. Okay, so to build for magic attack, you're going to want magic attack pieces of gear for your main stat. So as you see right here, most of these are going to say magic attack. All right, now I do have 2 pieces here that say defense, this piece, and the reason I did that is because I don't want this Vanessa to be squishy. You could arguably switch out these defense pieces for 2 more magic attack pieces if you want a full glass cannon it, but if you want to have her survive and have a little bit more defense on top of the damage resist, so have like basically a tanky attacker, this is kind of how I would build her. Because keep in mind, once again, we are building her for a ton of damage resist, so it seems like just a waste not to add a little bit of extra defense in there as well. But adding that extra defense in, I will admit, takes away from the overall magic attack we could be giving her. Now, in terms of substats, this is very important. you do want to go for damage resist as much as possible. You're going to want to go for crit rate as much as possible, and then you're going to want to go for magic attack as much as possible. Those are kind of the three I'd go for, and if you can get crit damage thrown in there, even better. But sometimes it's hard to reroll for the stats you want, but this is kind of like a somewhat ideal piece with the substats I would want right here. So pretty much every piece you're going to see here for me has damage resist in some way, shape, or form. That way I could get her damage resist up as much as possible to make the most of her enhanced passive. The whole thing about building this character is you are actually building towards her enhanced passive. So if you don't have her at least 2 duped, she's not going to be a very good character for you. I wouldn't even worry about building her. But if you can get her to 2 dupes or 5 dupes, then she becomes like infinitely better. So that's kind of the way you want to do her substats. And once again, if you don't know what these sets are, what I mean when I say sets, well, this attack set right here is made up. It's called the Ominous Gear set, and it's made up of the Ominous crystal that I have on Vanessa, as well as the Ominous pendant, and you can see them both equipped right here. 2 pieces gives me the 2-piece bonus that you see right here. And what I mean when I say gold sets, all of these have a gold star next to them. If you go into grade, you go into set, you can see all the sets. So we have a regular attack set, regular defense, regular HP, so on and so forth. Over here you have the gold sets. Gold sets are just generally always better than regular sets. So with that said, I have already told you that you definitely want to enhance this character if you can. Once again, getting to 5 dupes is more for whales, but 2 dupes I think is doable for free-to-plays and dolphins, and she's actually a somewhat reliable character. But then in terms of talents, the way you should be building her talent tree, I would recommend going for the increased magic attack, and then like I've been saying this whole time, I would go for increased crit rate because she does have that AoE attack. So if you're lucky enough to land a crit on that AoE attack with the increased damage from having your damage resist up, you are going to be able to land some pretty big numbers in addition to silencing the enemy team. As for the defense talents, I would go for the increased defense, and I would go for the grants defense and crit resist stacking. That crit resist right there, once again, going to be very helpful. And then support, I would also go for the damage resist. Damage resist right here, plus 10%. It's going to make you just... It's crazy to think that you could have such a tanky attacker. It's kind of weird, but I love it. I love the idea behind this character, and I think it's a lot of fun. And then I would also go for the SP plus 1 on her special skill, because like I've been saying, her special skill is her bread and butter. It's what's going to make her be kind of a really decent attacker when it comes to PvP and PvE. Now, with all that said, let's take a look at her teams. So this is one potential team you could still run to this day on Global. This was a team back on JP when she first came out that worked fairly well, but since then on JP we've had other characters and stuff come out that have kind of made this team not as good, and I'll admit even right now on Global it's not as good, especially with Black Asta existing and stuff like that, but it is a potential team you could run. So the idea behind this team is you're going to use Valtos and Finral to speed up your team, then you're going to be able to AoE with Vanessa if she is built up enough to do enough damage, and then you're going to be able to AoE with Noelle. And between their 2 AoEs, hopefully you just nuke the enemy team. But once again, Black Asta exists, so it doesn't work very well against Black Asta teams because he will raise the defense of the enemy team if he gets to go first and make it hard for you to kill. But once again, that's why you're running these 2 characters, so hopefully you don't have to worry about being slower than them, and ideally you're able to mostly nuke them before they're able to do anything. But once again, if you happen to not kill Black Asta between these 2 characters doing their AoEs, and he gets down to below 40%, he will just counter nuke your whole team. So it's kind of like a rough team to run, but it is a potential option you could run. Now, I actually like the mono green team a little bit better, especially since this Vanessa released at the same time as Charlotte. I think they kind of knew what they were doing because they realized this Vanessa wasn't really all that great until at least this Charlotte came out, and now that this Charlotte is out, we kind of have a better use for Vanessa, and I feel like she works fairly well with the Charlotte, the barriers that she gives and stuff like that. And the interesting thing is Charlotte can increase SP, and Longress can steal SP from other characters, so you can increase Longress's SP with Charlotte, and Longress can increase his own SP, so you have a basically infinite attacker right here. You have barriers from her and damage reduction with her, and then you have an AoE silence with her, so an attacker who does debuffs, which is pretty interesting, and then you have speed from Valtos. And you can end up switching out Longress with a bunch of other potential characters, so you could switch them out for something like Jack right here, another attacker. You could go for a defender like Radius, so then you have 2 supporters, a defender, and an attacker, and you're mainly relying on Vanessa to do damage. You could also even run potentially Despair Veto if you have Despair Veto. So there's lots of options for the mono green team right here. You could run Raya if you wanted for some nuking damage. You can run Licked. There's there's so many green characters right now that can be used. Like, there's just so many options, right? But I feel like Vanessa is a character who fits really well into the green team, into the green meta right now. So try her out. I think you'll be surprised at how good she can be. And then one other team you could potentially run is a team like this. So this is similar to this team that I showed you before, Finral, except for this time, instead of Finral, we have the red Charlotte. And the reason I like this team is because you have Valtos to speed you up. You have Charlotte to put her marks on the enemy. If you've upgraded your skill to, it's a 100% chance to put her marks on the enemy and decrease their defense. And then you do the AoEs with these two characters. And every time you kill a character, you get an additional turn, right? So it's just going to allow you to basically nuke the enemy team and go crazy. So I do think this is like the better version of this team right here. So this team works, but I think this team would be better if you have these characters, and more specifically, if you have these characters' skills upgraded. You need to have her skill 2 upgraded, you need to have her special skill upgraded, and you need to have her special skill upgraded to maximize your damage. Anyways, guys, that is the build guide for Vanessa. If you guys enjoyed the video, if it helped you out at all, please consider going down there, hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button, and thank you guys so much for watching and supporting the channel. Peace.